I believe the most interesting people go unnoticed through historical narratives, that we get into popularity contests and often see that the rich oligarchs or capitalist celebrities are in front of our face, whether that's Anna Akana or to the latest e-girl. We tend to forget that those people are often put there in positions of power, and we forget about people with no voices, or people who have always been there making art and saying very reactionary, even critical things ahead of their time. And one such individual is Al Stankard, or HAarlem VEnison, who has remained influential in the way I look about art. And a previous lecture where I talked about Daryl Basarab, Venison seems to be an acolyte of the Basarab kind of cultural paradigm where you exist in the spaces of far right culture, but are so transgressive you punk and troll those said people in far right circles as a way to criticize them. And I thought maybe I would tell my students who exactly is Al Stankard, or HAarlem VEnison, as he likes to be called. So Al has about 3 written published works that you can still get on Amazon. His most famous of these is Deaf to the World, an interracial racist love story. It's a great book, by the way. There is also Low, a Racist Exile, his poetry, and as well Hello, First Principles on Undoing That Which We Oppose. I have most of these books signed and personalized by him. And Hello, First Principles on Undoing That Which We Oppose was first given out as free when he hitchhiked to American Renaissance, oddly enough. And Deaf to the World was reviewed by James J. O'Mara of Countercurrents, gay white nationalist blog. And Al had this period of being this kind of hipster crust punk that would be nomadic and go everywhere, and kind of was trying to forward this Allen Ginsberg type of new age far right, or what you would call an acid right culture. He actually had a website called acidright.info or acidright.org, which sadly isn't up online. You can still find remnants of his writing on his Twitter and Facebook and some of his digital graffiti. But Al has remained a shocking voice in this circle and has pretty much predicted everything that has happened in 2021. Even Vice wrote an article on him, and it says, according to Vice magazine, the alt-right is a subculture without a culture. And it begins like this. Al Stankard is a racist. He believes that the biggest problem facing humanity is the insistence that everyone is equal, that a globalist elite is imposing multiculturalism on Europeans, and that black people in the US who demand reparations are engaging in serious violent rhetoric. And I guess that makes you a racist, right? This is what Vice says. And this journalist met him in the fall of 2017 at Rutgers University, who I was associating in that Rutgers scene as well. There's stories that when Al first went to Rutgers University, he got into a fight with the drummer of the New Brunswick band, the Screaming Females. So Al Stankard's presence was a well-known one as well. That would be the last time he would be at Rutgers campus. Eventually, Al wrote a new article for Russian Today this year, in the past month of 2021. And he writes, "My alt-right, anti-rich views made me unemployable. Now I'm ghostwriting college papers for rich lefty kids. What an irony. And he considers himself a political dissident and novelist living in New York City. I'll get to that in a bit. But since becoming unemployable due to my political activism, I've been earning college degrees for the children of my oppressors. Business is booming, but it makes me sick to my stomach." Great anti-American article that you should read on RT. And so Al Stankard has always worked behind this matrix and having the most avant-garde, radical criticism to the underground and as well as the system. He is a living, breathing, reactionary figure, anti-liberal figure. You can even find articles of his pranking when I remember back in 2017 when I helped Al Stankard put up these kind of funny pictures that would have a Gmail to his club he would have at Rutgers, such as like the logic of anti-racism rests on loose suppositions, and kind of this interesting rhetoric that he'll use to initiate dialogue between liberal normies, the middle class, and often he does this in an avant-garde pranking way to judge or criticize the neoliberal establishment. Al even made an appearance at something called Unite the Right 2 rally, where he was one of the main speakers. Of course, this rally was not as famous as the first one, but at least it was a try that Al wished he was at the first Unite the Right rally. And his speech is a wonderful speech. Al Stankard mixes the best of anti-capitalism, Strasserism, against neoliberal establishment, and as well his belief that anti-white politics, what the right would like to call, is ingrained in the neoliberal system, and that by going against capitalism, ultimately one is going against this liberal paradigm of multiculturalism and diversity and such. And so that is where the radical cause is at. Al would often constantly get media attention all the time. Back in 2016, when he went to the infamous Hailgate with Richard Spencer, he was there and he got his picture taken by Alexi Swall. And it says, Al Stankard, 29, originally from New Hampshire, goes by the internet name HAarlem VEnison. Hundreds of alt-right supporters gathered during a conference sponsored by National Policy Institute, run by Richard Spencer, at the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center on Saturday, November 19th, 2016, in Washington, D.C. I was supposed to go to that event, but I had one more semester of college to figure out, and I didn't have the audacity or confidence to drive a car at the time. However, that would be the last appearance of Tila Tequila and other well-known figures at Hailgate. And Al was kind of there always behind working on and making connections. And so in a way, like Daryl Basarab, if you haven't seen that lecture, pause this lecture and go see my Daryl Basarab lecture. Stankard is making these kind of school shooting, loving the media paint him as a monster, and he's enjoying it and yelling them back in their face in a kind of a funny way. His pranking on YouTube, which there are some videos left of him joking about the origin of my addiction to sex with refugees men, to why I cuck, to his very interesting archive videos of him to the drowning of final denigration. Al has a great sense of humor, and his humor mixes race play and liberal language, also as well as kind of this bizarre trolling psychedelica of sorts. One of Al Stankard's only film is up on my channel, The Frog Whose Existence Was Problematic, I still have. It's a great film, by the way, and I'm glad I have a copy of such said film there. Unfortunately, I could not go to the recording of that film, as I did not have the confidence, again, to drive a car, and as well that I was stuck at my parents' place. But now, sometimes I regret and wish I had some development of that film. But one part of the Frog film is that there is a Zootopia Yowie abortion comic that I told Al to print out, and he has that, so he thought that was hilarious. A part of Al Stankard's humor, I believe, is mixing up these liberal words and throwing them back out and sincerely believing them. He once said that I should write a book called Overcoming My Sexual Racism, Confronting White Women. I love that line, and I think about it all the time. But Al is a master at how CNN or Fox News headlines works, only then to regurgitate and use such liberal language to make fun of the system. Unlike being transgressive and saying you're a serial killer, he's taking that transgression and mixing it with this hilarious, radical, in-your-face shock humor, which I love, and it's very quiet and very subtle. And the subtleness, whether he wants to call his band the Black People, to saying he's got COVID and he needs minority status, is a part of Al Stankard's genius. So you ask what Al Stankard is doing now. Well, I was living with him in Bushwick, Brooklyn for a bit. Since then, he's got married, and he's been traveling across the road in his magical blue bus, which I call the Day Van Cowboy. It's a beautiful blue bus that he souped up himself, and he's been traveling across the country doing bizarre jobs and whatnot. However, he's been trying to suit in family life and trying to figure out how his artistic pleasures are going, or where to aim. Well, there was also plans of opening up a bookstore in Red Hook, maybe call it New Seed Press. As you can see, there's Boards of Canada's reference here, and just sell bizarre books and make it the next Feral House or something like that. Since COVID, everybody has went in disarray, as well as Al. Even the three-letter organizations have been after Al. It's also unfortunate that associate and ally Alex Hakkinen has died recently as well. I as well put it up a tribute video on my channel if you'd like to see that. And still, there is this disarray in the post-pandemic time. I've been trying to hopefully save the scene of my circle of what's left and what I saw growing up. And many figures like Al Stankard and Dara Basarab, even Alex Goldstein, still exist all around us and have had a huge influence the way the post-alt-right is thinking to this day. Many people do not know about these figures, but I was friends of each and every one of them. Hopefully, maybe Al Stankard will make a comeback instead of being underground, but I believe that Stankard has a huge impression and influence on what you would call the acid right. I strongly suggest reading his book Deaf to the World, and as well Google searching his name and just contacting him in person, as he lives up to his name as being an anarchist nomad who is indeed influencing the very criticisms of a right-wing on right-wing counterculture. So, class dismissed. Thanks for listening.